All right, everyone take your seats. We're going to get started. We've got a great panel for you today. So let's start off by just introducing yourself, saying hello, and which company you're with.
Hi, I'm Amezquita. I'm driving digital marketing transformation at McCormick and Company.
Obele Braun West. I am the president of Colle McVoy, part of the Stagwell family.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Zurell. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Sells Brands. We're a fashion house that has Chinese laundry, dirty laundry, CL by Laundry, and 42 Gold.
Amazing. So we were talking before about, right now, in fact, at Cannes, a lot of the conversations are about culture and the influence of culture and kind of cross-pollination inspiration. And we were talking about how traditional, we're not just sticking in our lanes anymore.
Yeah.
Can we talk about where you're getting your inspiration from? We can start with you.
We get our inspiration from a variety of different places and really look to the global stage when we're designing a line and a collection of footwear. Our designers actually travel over here to Europe, they go to China, they go to Japan, they go around the world to kind of source inspiration and then bring that inspiration back. So it's really cross-pollinated by culture and across industry. A kind of a funny, interesting fact as it relates to the production of leather and kind of colors and how we choose colors is that it actually starts in the automotive industry, which I find to be like such an interesting kind of fun fact, in that the interior of your cars and paint color will launch first and then you'll see it a couple years later in your footwear and your handbags and the color of your dresses. So, to your point, we really are looking and going across industries to create this cultural moment, and then as marketers get to tell stories about it, which I think is so fun. And what you're doing with your website is so incredible. I want to know more about that flavor.
So answering your question and your comment, so when we look at our consumers, like food and flavor is like entertainment, is like people are there on their phones looking at influencers, seeing what are the latest trends, flavor maxing, a great trend right now in TikTok. So we said we needed to revamp our digital experience. So we said, who's leading really on experiences? And we really found out that fashion is it. Fashion is creating the experience that consumers are demanding, the way you navigate, the visual navigation. So we took that and incorporated it into our digital experience that we just launched.
Mm-hmm. So can you give us an example of, I love this connection that they're looking to fashion and they're also eating. And can you talk about us through an example of that connection?
Well, if you think about it, like, the content that consumers are consuming on social is like, what's the latest trend? What are people wearing in Cannes? What people are wearing in the red carpet? It's the same thing. It's what's the latest restaurant that they went? What are the restaurants that they are going? What is the cooking? What are they mixing? For example, we just had some products that we launched that are called finishing salts. And they are very much in the line of flavor maxing. So one is like brown butter finishing salt. And we had an influencer that put it on her latte, like 800,000 views in a day. Like, people went crazy. So that's what people are craving, and that's what we're trying to incorporate, that content from influencers on our site, that visual experience.
And I would also just add, we support McCormick, and Frank's Red Hot is one of the brands that we support. I think most people saw the Paris Hilton activation during the Super Bowl. Paris Hilton is a fashion influencer icon. We put out teasers for it before the Super Bowl, and we sold out of Frank's Red Hot before we even got to game day. So there were a lot of people that didn't have their chicken dip because Paris Hilton made it go viral. So when we talk about like the intersection of culture and fashion and how it's related to food, that's a great example of that as well. And so from a Stagwell perspective, I'm sure everyone's gone to Sport Beach. Like, we're all in on sport, but we're in on culture. We're in on things that are actually going to move consumer intent. And so even when we're talking about sport, you can't talk about sport without talking about like the perp walk that basketball players take and the fits that they're wearing, or how the WNBA, although ladies are now showing their personalities in the clothes that they're wearing. And so there's a lot of just intersection all over. But really, I think a great example is what we did with Paris and Frank's Red Hot to show how it relates to the flavor aspect too.
But I think it's about like fashion and experience, about storytelling. I was looking at your Chinese laundry site. You have great storytelling on how your shoes are different. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. That's so kind. You know, I have an incredible art director. Her name's Camille Black, and she is such an incredible mind. And when we look at this collection, right, that I then get to market, we really work hard to create content that drives connection and that allows our customers to have this like kind of ethereal, fun moments where they step into the shoes and get to step into another world or step into this vacation moment, right? Because at the end of the day, marketing fashion, you're selling a vibe, right? You're selling a lifestyle, and balancing that idea of selling a lifestyle without leaning in too heavily to, you know, what used to be like the hey babe millennial marketing trend, which like, let's move on from it. Yeah. Let's move on and have new language. But yeah, I think that building that like authentic connection through meaningful content that allows people to really feel what they're wearing and express themselves. People express themselves through what they're wearing, and they express themselves through how they're cooking.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you guys are all very focused on the consumer. Can you talk about that? How you're engaging your audiences and how you're sort of thinking from their perspectives?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think from the agency perspective, what's interesting is that our clients are all different shapes and sizes. And so we have to be consumer obsessed to make sure that we're reaching the right target that we're trying to get after. So data. But on top of that, it's also just paying attention to what's happening in culture and finding those moments where we can culture tap and be influenced to bring really smart thinking and of the moment thinking to our clients. So it's a lot of I mean, I'm doing it right now, staring at people walking by and getting inspired. It's like a lot of people watching. It's a lot of like really digging into the qualitative and the quantitative to really understand the consumer that I'm trying to talk to across the different client sets that we have.
Yeah, you know, this is a really good point and an interesting question. The procurement department of most households that controls 75% of discretionary spending is held by women. And
You're here.
It's true. And of those 75% of that budget, only 49% of women actually feel like brands understand them. And so this idea of, as marketers, and our responsibility to really put ourselves in the shoes of our consumer and, like, to your point, be consumer obsessed is so meaningful. And I think we have to find better ways to, as brands, to exist within that culture, but also connect with our consumer. And I think you're doing a great job with that, right? With the way you're launching these new products, because as we look forward, it's like the little sprinkle, right, of this fun little way that you can elevate your latte at home, when maybe some of that discretionary spending is cut due to the global economy and what's going on, is important, because at the end of the day, we all need those tiny luxuries, and that's what, like, we look at with Chinese laundry as an accessible trend-forward footwear company. We like to call ourselves the other CL. I do. Not Christian Louboutin. We're Chinese laundry. But being able to afford those small luxuries, whether it's through a finishing spice or footwear, I don't know. It's important, I think.
We are always listening to consumers and understanding the trends. For example, birria became a trend very quickly. Like in the US, birria is everywhere. People are eating birria. There's a stand in New York City with a 1-star Michelin star. So what we did in Cholula, we just launched like a birria simmering sauce. Literally, you put the beef, the simmering sauce in your Instapot. 45 minutes later, you have the most delicious birria. So, we are listening with products, but then the storytelling. So we are working with influencers who said, okay, you can do the traditional dish, but what about melted cheese birria sandwich? And the way you see the creation of these out-of-the-box recipes, it really creates a conversation with consumers where we're listening to different segments, regardless of the profile they might have in flavor or the experience they might want to have bring home.
You mentioned influencers. Can you guys talk about how you choose which influencers to work with and why that's important?
I think we work in partnership with an agency that helps us find them and filter through them. Then we kind of talk about the recipes we want to be creating or the experiences. And based on that, we do the final selection. For example, we launched a 7-pack of Cholula. Like a lot of people didn't know we had 7 flavors, now 8. Of Cholula hot sauce.
I didn't know that, and I love Cholula.
So we work with an influencer because we launched a 7-pack on our shop, an e-commerce direct-to-consumer shop. So some influencer, one of the ladies specializes in eggs. So she did like deviled eggs with the 7 sauces. And then she would test them and say, oh, I like the profile here, I like the profile that. So we are looking how to filter and how to get the best experience, how to put flavor at the center, and really how to drive everything that we're doing.
Yeah, Andres brings up a really good point. I think the wrapper to that is authenticity, right? It's really making sure that you're finding the influencer that is authentically living the brand. There are plenty of influencers out there. A lot of them are walking around on the street right now, but they authentically can't represent every single brand, right? So again, I'll use the Paris example. That's hot. Come on. Like, of course that fits with Frank's Red Hot. Like, how did we not think of that before? So it's really finding those authentic people that can actually tell the story to their universe in a real way and insert the brand into that.
And to double click on that, and because I'm trying to reposition us as the other CL, I went after Taylor Swift, who only wears Christian Louboutin on stage. And so if I can get her in her everyday life wearing Chinese laundry casually, that's a win for me. And so that was a stretch goal and something that we were able to accomplish.
You did it.
And amazing.
Yeah, very, very proud of that one. She wore the butter yellow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Did it during the Eras tour. It's great. But yeah, I think to your point, you have to choose someone that's authentic with the story you're creating, right? So Taylor Swift was the most authentic person to me to get the shoes on, to be authentic to the story I'm trying to tell, which is we're your everyday CL.
I love that. Yeah, right, because you don't want to write the script and make it sound scripted. Otherwise, consumers can sniff that out right away.
Exactly. Authenticity over hype.
Exactly.
I love that. So we were talking about the online experience that you're creating and kind of how we're moving beyond just a transaction and trying to make this some kind of immersive thing. But at the end of the day, we do have to sell things. So kind of how do you balance that?
We do.
We do? What? We're selling them?
How do you sort of balance the transaction, but then still make it immersive and a storytelling and engaging to a consumer?
I think it becomes a virtuous circle. So first of all, we start with a digital shelf. We have to create visual storytelling that works fantastically. So we spent a lot of time trying to define what were the best infographics, pictures, recipe images, storytelling that we needed to have for our visionary retailers. And we created theirs around 15. We knew that most of them wouldn't take all. Now we're incorporating our site so people can see the storytelling. The interesting part is that retailers, they also want to sell. So now we're seeing how Walmart and Amazon are taking the 15, They are like, this works. You see the navigation, you see the storytelling. So things that we're doing to create the experience are also connecting to our retailers and also building our business in brick and mortar and other online channels.
That was such a beautiful answer. And I was so engaged in thinking about it because I also went to your website, and this video that you guys did at the beginning is it's like I want to live inside these spices. It's so beautiful.
Everybody go look at the McCormick
go look
website.
at the
Thank you.
website.
Go look at the
It's
website.
actually so beautiful.
Thank you.
When are you going to have Chinese laundry for men?
I mean, honestly, I think we should have a spice shoe collab.
Right here on this stage.
Right
No,
here.
I'm setting it up right here. I'm going to make it happen. We're making it happen.
It's coming to us first. Yeah, we're same, right? I want our customers to go online or walk into a store and see our product and be like, oh, this shoe is going to make me feel a certain way, right? A great pair of shoes can change your life. Just ask Cinderella, It's they make your outfit. You are in them. What shoes were you wearing when you took your most important steps? These are the things I want people to be thinking about. So I'm just constantly trying to create content that sells that vibe and vision. And I think that by doing that, we can create people to be passionate about the brand, right? And create that top of funnel so that when we get to the point of sale, it's they're already ready. We've created intent because they've seen it on influencers. They've seen it in the world. They've seen it in stores. And they're oh, I want to be the girl who in that ad, I want to be the girl who wears that shoe. And I think that really actually helps the conversion at the end. And if you're not doing that, then it just makes your ROAS really, really expensive.
They stole my answers. I'm good. They said it all.
It sounds to me like you guys are really leaning into the emotional connection.
100%.
We all have this emotional connection to what we put on our bodies, our clothing, what we put in our bodies, what we eat. Can you talk about how you are trying to sort of build that emotional connection?
I think first it's understanding really there are different flavor personalities. There's a utilitarian person who just wants tried and true recipes, nothing that is very complicated. There's people who like to do a lot of exploration, and they are going to be the first to say, oh, there's a Thai crushed pepper. I'm going to try that in my pizza. I'm going to try that in new dishes. There are people who are more social, so they are looking at trends and they want to try things or go to restaurants to do that. So providing content, providing visuals, providing recipes that resonate with all the different groups is one way that we're doing it.
Yeah, and building on that, it goes back to really understanding your audience and understanding your future audience that you're trying to attract, right? To figure out the emotional connection, you have to know who you're talking to. And so again, it goes back to being consumer obsessed and then understanding, okay, if I know that I'm going after the utilitarian, what type of story am I telling that utilitarian? If I know that I'm going after the fashionista, it's a very different story. Let me make sure that I am figuring out the right vehicle of content, story, narrative to continue to build from awareness all the way down to by the time they're ready to make that purchase, you're the only brand that they're thinking about. So really consumer obsession at the core and tailoring the content towards that consumer specifically.
I'll build on that and not touch on it because I completely agree with you. That's so wildly important. I like to think about what is our consumer doing, right? You have to know your customer. And I want to know what they're watching, what they're listening to, where they're going, what steps are they taking? And then I want to put the product in front of them. So we also did the footwear for Shakira and her world tour for her and all of her dancers. And I'm tapping into a new audience because we're expanding our global reach, right? So it's how am I going to get broader brand awareness? Oh, I'm going to actually tap into shared audiences, which I think is such like a powerful way to get eyeballs for, you're just sharing, right? You're sharing that audience, and it's cheaper to do partnerships than to try to build
With McCormick.
With McCormick, you heard it here first. And so yeah, it's like the mix of understanding your customer, understanding what they're doing, and finding ways to fit into their everyday life, so that you're making their life better. Because if you're not making their life better as a brand, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm not giving you my dollars.
It's so true. With collaboration in mind, I know you guys have all worked on different brands, and we're talking about inspiration from different categories. Can you talk about how your past, and obviously, Odele, you work with a lot of brands. Can you talk about how your perspective from working on, say, L'Oreal, that you can bring that into food and so forth, and how you bring your past into your present?
I think in my case, I've been very fortunate because I've been doing e-commerce while e-commerce has been evolving. So from an Amazon experience, like Mattel, Amazon, L'Oreal, Stanley Black & Decker. So it's really how it has evolved. It has been fantastic. And that's why right now is like when I look at who's leading that experience is the fashion brands. So I know the others, I know what they're doing. You even look at now at Amazon, they just launched their luxury experience, and it's completely experience on fashion brands. It's pretty good, actually. But you can see how the world follows different leaders at different moments. So that has been really rewarding. And to me, it's just it's almost like you're building throughout your career what is the best experience for the consumer. Because at the end of the day, going back to the beginnings of my career, the basics of consumer-centric, understanding your brand, your benefit, your character is very important.
It's funny, I was having a conversation with someone earlier this morning where one of the other brands that I currently support, it's a furniture retail company, and a lot of our inspiration as of late has been coming from QSR. And it's because in QSR, it's always very product focused, right? It's romancing the food, it's romancing the burger, the Chipotle burrito. And so having a conversation on when we're talking about a furniture retailer, what does that look like to romance the product, but really establish yourself in building a brand? And I've worked with QSRs before, so that's why that entered the conversation as we were starting to talk about we can still build the brand, but we can still romance the product. Look at what McDonald's does. Look at what Chipotle does. It can still be product oriented, but also with like a very brand led type of perspective. So I think Grace and I worked together many moons ago at Mattel, but I've always looked at that time because it was across the entire Mattel portfolio. There was Barbie and Monster High and Hot Wheels and so many different products, but then you actually are able to figure out how to connect them into other places in my everyday life. I took a lot of the thinking that I was doing on Mattel and I took it to the General because I was also working on the General. Right? But like the way that we were thinking about the strategy, I would leave those conversations. I'm like, you know what? That's a really good idea for the General, I was also working with Barney's at the time, New York. And so I think that's what I love about the agency spaces there. I see so many different things that I can cross-pollinate in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense to a lot of people, but because I'm in the weeds of different brands and businesses, I'm able to bring that into a lot of different places.
My background's in tech. I had a parking app that I founded back in 2015 called Pavement. It was like Airbnb for parking. And when I set out to build this brand, I was like, oh, I have to make people care about something that they don't really care about. And I was like, if I have to make parking sexy, like, how do I make thinking about parking sexy? So essentially, the way I did that was by connecting with culture. Like, look, where are you going? Which is kind of the same philosophy that I bring into sales brands. Is like, where are you going? Where are you walking? And so that idea of like people, right? Like, what are we doing as people? How are you living your life? And then how, as a brand, can we make it better? Because we're in the driver's seat. driving culture. And the driver's seat of the way people live their lives is served to them by the products they buy, the advertising that they see, and we're kind of drive like how people are able to show up in the world. And so with Pavement, I was trying to give them tools to live a more seamless life, and with Chinese Laundry, trying to give them a better way to express themselves and be able to also live a better life.
So we're talking about getting inspiration from different places. So tell me where you personally are getting inspiration right now to bring into your brand.
It's not at Cannes Lion right now.
It definitely can be. Maybe
Right on the stage. Right here.
That's why we're
right
here.
Right answer.
I mean, I know I've seen many, many inspiring things. So yes, it can be here.
I can start. So I'll give two answers. I have two. I'm a boy mom, two young boys, 9 and 4, and just seeing the world through their eyes like gives me a lot of like ideas a lot of times. And then outside of them, on the more controversial side, reality TV is a great place to just like brainstorm. It is, and I don't know what is going on there, but it is like an actual great place to just get inspired, good and bad. So wholesome, my kids. The weird part is maybe Real Housewives of like Atlanta or something. So
Love that answer.
You know, I'm a little bit also. I look at my kids; they're Gen Zers, and I think also, and I look at people I work with during my career. So I'm thinking like Axel Adida, the CMO from Bayersdorf. He had a great talk about Gen Zers, and it connects to a lot of the things that we're talking. Like Gen Zers, like the funnel doesn't exist for them, and you have to be providing commerce and content and experience in the same place. That's what I think the fashion brands are starting to do. That's what we're starting to do at McCormick, and we're trying to get to deliver that. Because again, they think and they interact with the world in a very different way. So literally, I use them as test markets. Like my youngest one even says, here comes the commercial. Here's the brand sponsor messaging, but his tribe of friends love it. So it works.
Yeah, same. Got to look to the kids, of course, right? They have a different lens. They're going to be the next consumers that are spending those dollars. The kids have never had more money than they have now because
trust my son, my 9-year-old asked me for a Gucci wallet for his birthday. I was like, how do you even know what Gucci is? Like, my God.
Cool.
And then he's like, you're my mom. I was like, all right, well, fair.
I don't remember the exact statistic, but more now than ever, kids are brand obsessed and they have so much access through social media, right? And so they know all of the brands. And so like what they're paying attention to is something that we have to also pay attention to. But for a broader and maybe more ethereal answer as it relates to inspiration, I think it's just like having so much gratitude for everything that we have around us and being able to like pick up like the little things, right? Like this is so vibrantly green and beautiful, and like is there a world or a way that like I would want to incorporate this color into a campaign? How, like, what shoes would I want to put here? Looking at like how I could give the experience that I'm having in real life as I travel the world and get to do all these amazing things, and being able to portray that to our customers so that they can have a slice of that, because maybe they're actually shopping at DSW in Middle America and they don't ever get to come to France. And how can I transport them through fashion to having an experience that they otherwise wouldn't be able to have? So the inspiration is all around us.
I absolutely love that. My last question. You mentioned the collapsed funnel. With Gen Z, things are fast. You're just doing it. How, as marketers, the planning cycles are not what they used to be. Is it killing you guys? Like, how are you keeping up with the speed of culture and adapting?
So, you still need to do the planning. You still need to do the thinking, the strategy, the longer term plan. But then you need to learn to be very agile. Like when you see that pickle lemonade is a trend, and we have, flavors that deliver that pickle flavor, we can jump on that. We can deliver, and we can create that experience. So it's really about keeping your overall plan, but then being able to react very quickly to everything that's happening culturally and experientially with our consumers.
Stole my answer again. It's if you're building a brand, you can't be, pun intended, the flavor of the month, right? You do need to have like a plan on here's what my goal is. My goal is to get Taylor Swift in our shoes. You have to be methodical about a long-term plan, but you need to also figure out the agility aspect, and you need to plan for that because culture is moving so quickly. You have to make sure that you have room for that so you're able to tackle it in a strategic way. If you don't have the long-term strategy, I think it could turn into the flavor of the month moments that don't actually help you build the brand that you're trying to build success towards.
Yes, and I think to get tactical on it, it's about how you're managing your budget and leaving space in your budget to react quickly, and not, which means I have to leave a bucket, right? There has to be a bucket to be able to react. And if you don't have that, it's going to be too difficult. So do the planning,
Right.
but give yourself room to play.
Yeah, 100%.
I love that. Thank you guys. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.